I never thought a single sentence could hit me harder than years of betrayal, but hers did. "You're not a man," she spat, her voice dripping with contempt. It wasn't said in anger. It wasn't a fleeting insult. It was deliberate, calculated, meant to wound, humiliate, and strip me of everything I thought I had earned in our marriage. I didn't respond. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I simply stood there, letting the words hang in the air between us like a storm cloud. She had stormed out of the apartment, slamming the door behind her, leaving only the echo of her contempt and the suffocating silence of what remained. For hours, I sat on the couch, replaying her words, dissecting the venom behind them. My mind wasn't clouded with rage. It was clear, sharp, strategic. Because anger, I realized, was fleeting. Humiliation could be converted into fuel, but only if handled correctly. Over the next few days, I did something I hadn't done in years. I documented everything. Every time she belittled me, undermined me, or tried to control me with words and manipulation, I logged it. Emails, texts, voicemails, even screenshots of her social media posts where she bragged about leaving me weak or inadequate. I created a record, not for revenge, at least not immediately, but for truth. Truth is a weapon far sharper than insults. Weeks passed. She continued her usual behavior, mocking me in front of friends, calling me less than during conversations, flaunting her independence, and dismissing every attempt I made to communicate. But this time, I didn't react. I let her dig her own hole. Every insult she threw only became another piece of evidence, another proof of her cruelty. Then came the opportunity. A mutual friends gathering, a weekend dinner where both of us were invited. She arrived late, radiant, confident, perhaps expecting to humiliate me in front of everyone. She didn't know I had already prepared. I arrived early, calm, composed. I smiled, shook hands, and mingled with friends as if the last few weeks of contempt hadn't happened. Then, at the right moment, I subtly began revealing the truth, not directly to her, not as an attack, but as facts. I shared stories of our life together, highlighting my achievements, my loyalty, the ways I had supported her through hardships. I mentioned in passing some of her public declarations of independence, her attempts to belittle me online, and the contradictions that had grown obvious to those who truly knew us. I didn't shout. I didn't argue. I let her actions speak for themselves. The effect was instantaneous. Friends who had been unsure, who had maybe believed her manipulations, began to see the pattern. They asked questions, quietly at first, then more pointedly. "Wait, she said this? And you handled that how?" I didn't know this was happening. She noticed the shift. Her confident facade faltered. The smirk that had been her shield slipped. She tried to interject, to twist narratives, but I was prepared. Every statement she made was met with calm, measured facts, every accusation countered by evidence I had meticulously collected. By the end of the evening, the balance had shifted entirely. She was no longer in control. The people who had once been passive observers were now witnesses to the truth. The woman who had declared me not a man now sat quietly, realizing that the real strength, the real manhood, wasn't in words, domination, or drama. It was in restraint, preparation, and resilience. After the gathering, I didn't gloat. I didn't seek revenge beyond the truth being visible, but the satisfaction was undeniable. She tried to reach out afterward, to apologize, to explain herself, to reclaim some control, but I had nothing left to give. My response was simple. I hope you learn from this. I have. Months passed. She continued to lash out in subtle ways, but her attempts to undermine me were powerless. I had rebuilt my life around clarity, honesty, and people who truly valued me. My career advanced, friendships strengthened, and even my family, long silent, recognized the integrity I had maintained while she tried to destroy it. One evening, I found myself reflecting on her parting words, the ones that had cut deeper than any argument, any betrayal, any insult. "You're not a man!" I realized then that being a man, or being human for that matter, isn't about shouting, dominating, or forcing respect. It's about patience, resilience, and self-respect. It's about rising when others try to push you down. And most importantly, it's about letting the truth, not anger, define your victory. She had thought she could humiliate me, break me, erase me. Instead, she revealed herself, not as a force to fear, but as someone who could not endure the quiet strength of someone she underestimated. The final lesson, the one she would never understand, is this: you cannot define someone by your anger or judgment. You can't diminish what another person has built through consistent effort, integrity, and calm perseverance. And sometimes the most powerful way to respond to betrayal isn't to fight, it's to live. I did. I thrived. I moved forward with dignity, self-respect, and an unshakable sense of who I was. And every time I remembered her words, I smiled, not in anger, but in quiet triumph, because she had thought she could destroy me with a sentence. I had proven that no sentence, no insult, and no act of betrayal could touch the strength I had cultivated quietly, patiently, over the years. And that strength, my life rebuilt, my happiness reclaimed, my peace intact, was more than enough. She left thinking she had won. But in reality, the victory was mine all along.